The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Matt Sleater from Elliott's, and welcome to our webinar, Charging Hours is Only Part of the Revenue Equation. This is the first in a series of webinars I'll be putting together over the next 6 to 12 months. Due to the overwhelming response I had from the incorporated legal practice webinars that I did earlier in the year, I've decided to put together a program that will help the legal industry, I hope, in terms of developing and implementing strategies in your businesses to improve your profitability and cash flow. I'm a chartered accountant who's been working with professional services firms as their accountant and also as their strategic advisor for many years now in the accounting industry, the engineering industry, the legal industry, and so on. And so the concepts that I'll be presenting to you today and in future webinars are those concepts that have been tried and tested and that work within professional services firms and work also within other businesses all around the world. So just to get us started, I'd like to just do a very quick poll just to see who we've got listening in today. So if you could just take a moment to just tick one of the boxes so I can get a bit of a feel for who we've got listening in. That'd be great. Okay, so thanks very much. We've currently got 25% of our listeners are sole practitioners, with 31% being 2 and 3 principal firms, and so on. So that gives me a really good idea as to who's listening in. So thanks for that. So moving right along, our approach when we're doing work for any client, and when we're looking at what strategies need to be developed in any business, is to assess where that business is around them being financially well organised. And what we're going to be focusing on today is the business planning part of our financially well organised strategy. And that is to have a look at the business and focus on the revenue strategy in the business, which is one of the key 5 drivers of business success. So we're going to be focusing heavily on looking at your revenue strategy. You're going to be doing a little bit of an analysis of what most firms focus on when they develop their revenue strategies year in, year out. And then I'm going to put to you a different way of thinking and a different model of how you should go about developing your revenue strategy and then creating the action plans that you need to focus on to implement that. All of the work that I do with clients comes off the back of numbers. So being a chartered accountant, that's basically how we analyse things, is that we have a strong belief that the numbers don't lie. But then it's the behaviours and the actions of the organisation that has the effect on those numbers. So whilst we're going to take a very numbers-based approach to looking at what your revenue strategy should be, we're also going to take a focus on what those actions and activities need to be in your practice to produce your revenue targets that you're wanting to achieve. So step 1 is just to have a look at what happens in most firms. I call it squeezing the orange. Most firms spend most of their time in the production and delivery area of their business. What I mean by production and delivery is basically doing the work. So you've got your cost agreement signed. You open a file and away you go. You've got either yourselves or your solicitors or your paralegals working away at getting that file completed so that you can raise a fee. So I would say 90% of the activities that happen in any legal practice are around the actual doing of the work. And then occasionally, when they feel that there's a need to go and try to find some new work or do some what might loosely be described as marketing, there's some ad hoc other revenue activities that are done. So I call it squeezing the orange because if the majority of the focus in a practice is around the production and delivery, so it's focusing on getting more out of the people that we've got and recovering more out of the clients that we've got, it's like an orange. If you keep squeezing it and squeezing it, eventually that orange is going to run out of juice. And you can only really get so much out of the people and out of the clients that you have in your business. So if you want to be creating a different focus and a different approach to driving revenue, you need to change this. So looking at what your current revenue formula would be is you've got a certain number of full-time equivalent fee earners. You multiply this by the numbers of hours that they've got available in their day or in their year. You have a productivity percentage, and that's the percentage of the time that they're going to be charging to client work. After that, you have a charge rate that applies to those numbers of hours that are charged, and then you recover an amount of that. Ideally, you recover 100% of that time that's charged, but invariably you'll have a write-off of some of that time and not so often a write-on of that time. And that produces your revenue. From that, you take out your direct labour cost, and that gives you a gross profit. So when I talk about your direct labour cost, I mean the direct cost of your fee earners. I'm not talking about your administration charges. Most firms develop their revenue strategy using this model. Most of them, though, don't separate out their direct labour cost, though, from their total labour cost to get a clear picture of what it costs them to generate that revenue from an hour's perspective. So let's put some numbers to this. First of all, this business might have 6 full-time equivalent fee earners. So what we're building here is I'm going to apply this model to how you probably do things at the moment and then overlay a new model for you as to how you need to be developing your revenue based on these numbers. So you have 6 full-time equivalent fee earners that have 44 weeks that they might be available to work in a year. So that takes out annual leave, statutory holidays and a sick leave allowance at 38 hours a week, which gives you 1,672 hours in a year available. This firm's expecting that their team charge 5 out of 7.6 hours a day, which gives them then a productivity percentage of 66%, at an average charge rate across the firm of $275 per hour. And from there, they recover 92.6% of that time that's actually charged into WIP. That means that they're writing off 7.4% of their time. By multiplying all of those numbers together, this particular firm, therefore, has got revenue of $1.68 million that it generates out of the billings that it does to their clients. They then have a direct labour cost of $480,000, which produces them a gross profit of $1.2 million. Just want to do a very simple poll here, just to see whether or not that is a normal budgeting process. That if you do budgets, that's how you go about assessing how much revenue you're going to make in the next year. From my experience, this is what has been promoted across professional services industries. And in my view, what this produces is a significant cap and the incorrect behaviours that are produced within the practice, which really inhibits growth. That's probably a whole completely different webinar topic. But just having a look at the responses there, 88% of you have said that That's the normal sort of model that you use in calculating revenue, and 12% saying it's not. So it's really good to hear that there are some firms out there that aren't using that as a methodology. So moving on to a different formula. So if you can sort of take a bit of a snapshot of that screen, and remember those numbers as we're moving forward. $1.68 million in revenue, 480 of labour costs, giving a gross profit of 1.2. What I'm going to put towards you now is a different revenue formula, and this is a revenue formula that is used in every business around the world. It is no different whether or not it's a professional services firm, whether or not it's a retail firm, whether or not it's a wholesaler or a construction a business. This is the revenue formula that should be used when calculating the amount of revenue that you want to generate in a year. And it's simply, what's your number of existing clients plus the number of new clients you get in a year. What that produces for you is how many clients you've got. So there will be clients that sit on your database that you may not have done any work for a number of years. In my view, they are still existing clients, and there are still opportunities for you to be working with them. And the number of new clients is simply how many you pick up in a year. You then multiply that by the transaction frequency. So how many times within a year our total market of existing clients and new clients, or the clients that we have, deal with us in a year. Multiply that by the average sale, so the average amount that they spend with us on each transaction in any year. You multiply that then by the margin, so the percentage of the gross profit as a percentage of the sales, and that then produces for you a gross profit dollar amount. So if you think about it, how many clients do we have? How many times do they use us? By the amount of time they spend with us each time, and then take out of that what it costs us to deliver that revenue. That produces the amount of money that we actually make from a gross profit percentage. So let's put some numbers to this. So here we're just going to apply that same P&L or that we had previously. So here we've got 7,000 existing clients. So there's 7,000 clients on this firm's database that are considered to still be active, but we really haven't been in contact with. And in this year, they picked up 750 new clients. They did 860 matters, which over 7,750 clients on average produced a transaction frequency of 0.111 of a time per client. They had an average transaction amount of $1,953. So if you multiply the number of clients times the transaction frequency times the average sale amount, it produces their revenue of 1,680. So what we've done is we've taken that previous formula of number of full-time equivalent fee earners times available hours times productivity times charge rate times recovery rate, and broken that down into effectively what are the services, what are the number of services, and for what value are those services that we've provided to generate our revenue in that year. So we've just broken down, taken a bit of a different view on it. What we then do is we understand what our labour cost is, and our labour cost of $480,000. If we take that away from our revenue, it gives us a margin of 71.4%, which then produces for us a gross profit dollar amount of 1.2 million. So just wanting to compare those two different formulas. The first formula, what it's telling us is that our total revenue is being driven by the number of people that we can have. The very first number at the top of that formula was full-time equivalents, and those full-time equivalents then required the business to charge a certain number of hours in a year and recover that certain number of hours at a certain rate to drive the to drive the revenue. Now, I'm not saying that's not important. You'll see in a moment that time charging is an extremely important component of generating your revenue. For law firms, that's the majority of the ways that law firms calculate their income. But what I'm saying to you now is that in terms of understanding what your real revenue is, it's got to be based on what you are actually selling. And I don't apologise for using selling and sales, because that's what we do. It's the number of transactions at the value of those transactions that we actually sell to our clients, what they actually buy from us, that really generates our revenue. So I'm going to put a little bit of a different model to you. So if you go back and remembering squeezing the orange, where squeezing the orange is about that management of hours and doing the work with an ad hoc other revenue activity, a more appropriate and a methodology for focusing on what activities in the business is what I call the 5-dimensional revenue strategy. And that's focusing on what your product is, what it is you're selling, what your marketing activities are. So what are the things that you need to do around how you let your clients and prospects know what you sell. Sales is about how you sell your product to your clients. So it's the process that you go to about signing them up. So you don't actually get to do any of that work until they say, yes, we're going to get you to do it and make the sale. Production and delivery work is around how you do your work, and then how you manage those relationships with clients is a major component, because the better you manage those relationships with clients, the more they come back and buy again. The number of conversations that I've had with legal firms over the years where they say, oh, look, all of this stuff is great in theory, but the fact is we are transactionally based with our clients. It all is totally reliant on our clients entering into transactions and doing things. And in a way, that's true. However, the fundamental reason why a client uses you is simply because they trust you in the majority of instances to do the best thing by them. So what that means is they enter into a relationship with you. So the better you manage that relationship and the stronger that relationship is with your clients, the more trust that you gain and the greater the opportunity it is to buy from you. So if we take this 5-dimensional revenue strategy, and then we overlay on this 5-dimensional revenue strategy the revenue and the margin components of the revenue growth equation, we can see that you've got your product marketing and sales. That part of it drives your revenue. Okay, so that's those activities that you do around what you sell, how you get the message out there, and then how you actually convert those clients. That drives your top line in your business. You've got to get clients signing your costs agreements and agreeing for you to do the work before you can actually go and do it. What the sales part of the revenue strategy and the production and delivery part of the revenue strategy does, it just drives your margin. It's around your efficiency. Okay, so the only area of a revenue strategy that can impact on both revenue and your margin is your sales. So the price that you charge. The other components cannot impact at all on both your revenue and your margin. So in applying the revenue formula, the only thing that production and delivery can focus on is efficiency. It's the difference between what your revenue is that you generate and the cost of the labour that you require to generate it. So if you're an inefficient business, it's going to cost you more to produce that revenue. If you're an extremely efficient business, it's going to be less costly to generate your revenue. So it's an important thing. Because if you think about the squeezing the orange revenue formula, the only thing that that production and delivery can impact is efficiency. And with efficiency, you can only impact that so much. Where your unlimited growth comes from is from your product marketing and sales activities. So if we bring that back to the growth equation, that top component, the driving revenue part, is really looking at your number of clients. It's looking at your number of your transaction frequency. It's looking at your average sale. That drives your revenue. The relationship with sales and margin is going to be dependent on what the value of your revenue is, and then the cost of doing that, the efficiency part, that produces your margin. So let's put those two together. So from a revenue development perspective, if you think about the revenue growth formula, number of clients times transaction frequency times average sale times margin, and you overlay that with your 5-dimensional revenue strategy, what you end up is with a matrix, so that you know what type of strategies or what type of activities you need to be focusing on in your business to drive the outcomes in that revenue strategy. Remembering that the only activity here that is in both that is in all components is sales. So from a margin perspective, sales will drive your margin. It'll also drive your average sale, transaction frequency, and new clients. But from a margin perspective, you can see the production and delivery line there. It will only impact on margin. So let's just take a look at that. So if you want to focus on driving new clients in your business, you need to develop marketing and sales activities to generate those new clients in a proactive way. If you want to focus on strategies to drive your transaction frequency, you need to focus on both product marketing, sales, and client relationship management systems, so that those clients buy from you more regularly. And you've got to be proactive with this. If you're driving your average sale up, you can think of what other products that we can sell. What can we package in? What other products or what other services do we provide to our clients that we can talk to them about at the same time as doing this particular engagement? What are the marketing activities we need to drive average sale up? What are the sales activities? What's our client relationship activities? From a margin perspective, it's around sales and production and delivery. What's the price that we charge, and how efficiently do we do the work? So if we think about your current revenue formula, we think about squeezing the orange. All that really focuses on is the production and delivery area. So if you've got a strategy that you want to implement around growing revenue, and you continue to utilize the squeezing your orange formula to generate that revenue, you have got very limited options in being able to do that. Basically, what you'll do is you'll end up doing not too much at all, because you're focusing on having to get your numbers of hours up to be able to generate additional revenue. What that'll mean is one or a combination of the components of that formula. You'll need to get more people. Well, that's an outlay in the hope that you get more revenue. You need to increase their productivity, so they're charging more hours to clients. You need to reduce your write-off so that they're being more efficient in recovery. Those variables by themselves, just focusing on them, will create a behaviour that is focused on squeezing the orange. They'll create a behaviour that means you've got to get more out of what you've got, or alternatively, you've got to go and hire more people, which a lot of businesses are quite reticent to do, simply because they then don't have the confidence that there's going to be more revenue coming in. And that's mainly because most of the revenue activities that are done by a firm are around doing the work with just ad hoc. So So any revenue growth is going to be based on hope. And from a strategic planning perspective, hope is not a strategy. But if you apply the five-dimensional strategy and you apply the revenue growth equation, you've got so many more opportunities, so many more activities that you can focus on in your business to drive the revenue growth. So if you're looking at this, you can stop and think, well, okay, what is going to be our focus for the next year? Is it going to be around new clients? Do we need new clients? How can we engage with our existing clients about doing more work for them? If you're a specialist firm that provides one service, maybe family law or maybe PI, then your focus might not necessarily be around transaction frequency, but your focus might be around, well, how do we increase the number of clients and how do we generate greater revenue out of each client, and how do we improve our efficiencies then to drive more revenue? So what this revenue matrix does, it gives you a map of what you need to be focusing on. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run through some of the calculations just to show you how you can analyze your revenue mix to see exactly what you should be focusing on and what the impact of that will be. So you should see on your screens now the revenue growth equation put into some numbers. So we've just taken the on the left-hand side of the screen, we've applied the revenue growth equation, and on the right-hand side under capacity assessment, that's gone and analysed the income on the basis of hours charged. So if you can just think back to the slides that I ran through previously, we had 7,750 clients that had transaction frequency of 0.11 of a time per client with 860 matters, average sale of 1953 with $1.68 million of revenue and a margin of 71% producing a GP. If we have a look at how those numbers transpired in terms of how we generated that revenue, we had 6 full-time equivalents at a productivity of 65.8%, which gave us 6,600 charged hours in a year at an average rate of 275 at a recovery rate of 92.6% produced our revenue. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to work through each of the components of the revenue growth formula, and we're just going to see how those numbers fall out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at, from a capacity perspective, what are the activities that we need to be implementing in our business, in the production and delivery area, so that we can determine whether or not we've got enough people. So what I'm putting to you here is that what we do first in developing your revenue strategy is you work out, based on client numbers, transactions, and sale values, what your revenue is that you want to do. You develop strategies then around using the five-dimensional revenue strategy model to develop your focus on what those activities are that you need to be implementing to achieve this revenue. Then what you do, once you've determined what that revenue needs to be or you want it to be, you then go into your capacity planner using your old formula to determine whether or not you've got enough people and what the changes are that you need to make in those key drivers of capacity to be able to produce your revenue. Now, I'm not sure of some of the ages of people that we've got listening in, but hope maybe there's some of you there that can remember the time pre hours-based billing. And hours-based billing, the use of time recording previously used to be used to assess the efficiency in a business. The way that bills were often generated, and I've heard this story time and time again, it happened in my industry as well. Sometimes people would use the old rule. They'd pull out the files and see how thick they are, and that would determine, well, this is what the fee would be. But then what happened is that someone got a really clever idea and decided to introduce time costing and rates to be a methodology of how we calculate our revenue. And by its very nature, it creates an entire range of non business profitable behaviours. It requires, to generate revenue, it requires more hours to be charged. So that means efficiency isn't really the best way of focusing on generating revenue, because the more hours you charge, the more likely you'll be able to generate additional revenue. Whereas everyone knows in any business, the more efficient you are, the happier a client will be, the more capacity you've got to do additional work for existing and new clients, the more ability you've got to grow your revenue. So your current revenue model, what it actually does, it puts a ceiling and a whole pile of pressures on your business to generate that income. So what I'm challenging you around is use your hours-based model to go back to originally what it was designed for. It was designed to measure whether or not you've got enough people and how efficient they are within your business to produce your revenue. So calculate your revenue targets first, then go back and see whether or not you've got enough hours. So let's put some numbers in. First of all, in this business, they might be saying we want to get a 5% increase in our number of clients. So we've got 7,750 clients on our database. So to get a 5% increase, we only need to get 388 new clients. Last year, this particular business, to generate its revenue, had to focus on getting 750 new clients. So by just focusing on a 5% increase, there's only half that number that they need to produce. Now, there's an interesting concept here. It is so much easier to sell products and services to existing clients than it is to new clients. It is so much easier to generate revenue from existing clients than it is to new clients. But what businesses tend to do, and law firms in particular, they constantly focus on getting new clients to generate their revenue when they've already got a captive audience in their existing client. And without a great amount of contact with them and activity around managing those relationships, it puts an incredible cost on the business because it's very costly to find new clients. So what we're saying here is that this business is just going to focus on getting a smaller number of new clients because they're going to be putting their activities into the other components of the revenue model. You're going to be looking at their database and they're going to be saying, well, currently out of all of our clients, they're only using us about 11% of them are using us on average for each transaction of the year. What we're going to do is we're going to do a slight improvement in that. We're going to develop strategies by looking at our products, by developing strong marketing activities. Marketing is not about advertising, and it's not about brand awareness on billboards and all of those sort of things. What it is about it's about supporting you in your process of educating your clients around what you do and how you get that message out there. So all we're doing here is we're focusing on marketing activities to drive our transaction frequency up. So what that does, it produces a very slight increase in the number of transactions. So our number of transactions for this year have just gone from 860 to 994. So only an additional 133 matters for the year. We're then going to focus on getting a 10% increase in price. Now, in our sale value, there's a number of ways of doing that. It might be about a price increase. It might be around packaging up other products or other alternatives, other services for clients in doing the work that you do. What I do when I do work with clients, I always give them options as to how they want to work with me. I'll give them 3 options every time. I'll get really clear on what their objectives are and what they're trying to achieve. I'll get really clear on what it is, when they know they would have achieved those objectives. And then I really get a clear understanding of what the value to the client is of achieving those objectives. Not the value to me, but the value to them. And once I'm aware of that, I'll work out a number of options for them to choose. And by using this approach, it allows me to increase the average revenue I make per transaction with clients. Option one might be a type of a self-help solution. So we'll get that mapped out for you. We'll give you an overview, and then what you'll do is you can go away and implement it yourself. Option two might be doing some additional analysis so that it's a bit more detailed rather than high level, and then it might be supporting them around implementing that. So it's doing what we did in the first option, but adding extra support that will allow them to achieve their objectives with more confidence. And then option three will be adding more value again to make it even a greater opportunity for them to achieve their objectives. And each of those options are priced higher. So I'm actually able to create the revenue that I want to, and I help the client achieve the objectives that they need to out of option one. But I'm putting it back on the client to say, well, you tell me how you want me to work with you. So it's implementing different sorts of strategies and how you engage your clients to come up with your actions to increase your average sale. I'm making the point there that it's not just about putting up charge rates. So all that's doing on an average sale perspective is just adding another $195 onto each average sale. What we then can think of is, well, what are the activities we've got to do within the business to drive our margins? So, we might need some more people, so that might mean we've got more cost, but what can we do differently within the business to create more efficiency? And this business is just looking to get a 5% efficiency gain in their business. So looking at the revenue growth, in this particular business, the revenue growth was a potential additional $454,000 by focusing on simple strategies around having not as much of a focus on new clients, but having more of a focus, because we've halved that from the previous year, having more of a focus of doing more work, but only doing more work with 10% of our client base one more time, increasing our average sale by $195 for every time that we work with clients. So in just applying that as a formula, it produces $454,000 of additional revenue. And then by focusing on margin activities, out of that 454, we get to keep $400,000. So that's the point there that I'm wanting to make around your current model. If you're just focusing on squeezing the orange, you are going to get a minimal improvement by margins and efficiencies. The real key to driving improved dollar margin growth is around driving your revenue, so product, sales, and marketing, and the activities that drive the number of clients, transaction frequency, and average sale, and then the efficiency around how you do that work. So what that produced is if the business was able to achieve that, you're able to produce a 33% improvement in your gross margin. Fewer numbers of new clients, engaging more with existing clients, and marginal increase in your average sale produces a significant improvement in the profitability of your business. So that's your revenue. Now we're just going to talk about capacity. So if we did nothing in terms of our efficiencies, and we said we're going to still just have our 6 full-time equivalents, and they're just going to continue doing 65.8% productivity for the year with an average rate of 275 and recovering 92.6%. Then we're going to need to have a look at what level of additional full-time equivalent we're going to need. So if we looked at the activities that we're going to implement in our business, we've got 6 full-time equivalents. What we're going to do is we're going to take away some of the activities that are non-chargeable type of activities that our authors, our fee earners do, with a view to getting a slight improvement in their productivity up to 70%. What we're going to do also is we're going to make a decision across the board to put our charge rates up. And we're only going to put those up as on an average of $15 per hour. And then we're also going to implement some systems in the business might even just be being a bit more courageous around how we bill our clients. I can tell you the key to managing write-offs in a business is how you engage your clients right at the very front end. Um, and the better you engage them when you're doing your costs agreements, the easier it is to get recovery. But let's just say we're going to reduce our write-offs down to 5%, so we're recovering 95%. If you have a look at your business, then it's telling you, well, we need to achieve $2.134 million, and we're going to do that via the actions that we'd previously spoken about. But we're also going to focus on some efficiency gains, and they're only going to be marginal. But what it's telling us is that if we're going to implement these numbers and implement these actions, and we're going to get this $2.134 million of revenue, with these efficiency activities, we're still going to be short. So we'll need an additional full-time equivalent person in our business of 0.62. Now, the beauty of focusing on this is that if you use your current model, you're saying, well, God, I've got to go and employ somebody right now to be able to generate that revenue. Whereas you don't have to go and get that person straight away. You start creating and developing your activities using your revenue growth equation and monitor your capacity so that when you get to the point that you can see coming in the near future, you need to hire someone, then you go and do it. But most businesses don't take that step because they don't create their revenue actions first. They focus on how many hours, how many people am I going to need. So that's just a very simple example of how you apply your revenue growth formula and then how you measure the capacity of that business. So if you can hear a noise in the background there, I've been lucky enough to do a webinar today when they're starting to renovate one of the toilets next door. So that's a jackhammer you can hear. So that's basically all I wanted to cover off with everybody today. What I'm offering for everyone is for the first 15 participants who have listened in today, what I'm offering is a free 45-minute one-on-one web meeting. So we'll do it just over GoToMeeting, over the phone or over the internet, where you will be able to take your numbers and put them into that calculator to get a really clear assessment of what's possible in your business. We can have some discussions around what strategies you can implement in your business to generate your growth over the next 12 months and into future years. So all you need to do is just email me on matt@elliotsgroup.com.au, and we'll come back to you with a very simple little questionnaire just to give us some data on your business that we can then put into that calculator, and then we'll schedule in some times. These meetings are absolutely free, and there is absolutely nothing that you need to do, or no requirement for you need to be doing anything with us after then. But all I can say to people is I just hope that you've from this session got a new way of thinking around how you need to be generating your revenue. And I can't put it any more succinctly than what Albert Einstein did when he defined insanity. He said, if you want to the definition of insanity is keeping on doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So what I'm putting to you today is that there is a better way of thinking about how you generate your revenue. You still have very much a valid point of and a valid strategy around using hours-based charging, but you need to put it in the right context of where it fits in that revenue equation. And it's around how you manage the capacity to be able to deliver your revenue. But your revenue is built on how many clients you have, how many times they use you, how much you sell to them every time, and then you develop your action plans around product, marketing, and sales to really drive your top line. So thank you all for listening in. The next Grow Your Law Firm webinar is going to be about developing a revenue pipeline for a legal firm. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking that driving revenue component and exploring it further in helping you drill down to to looking at what those activities are and how you go about creating a sales or a revenue pipeline in your firm that can provide you with greater confidence around predicting what your revenue is going to be. So you'll get another email in the near future. So please log in and register. You might also like to connect with us via LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So you just go to Elliot's group and you can link in there. But thank you very much, all of you, for listening. Don't forget the first 15 to email me and book in those appointments. We'll schedule in those times. When I ran the ILP seminar webinars, by the time I left my room here where I do the webinars and got back to my desk, those 15 places had already been filled up each time. So thank you again, and see you next month.